While in custody, she had a pizza delivered to the front office. Turns out she'd hidden a phone in her vagina. The sergeant, I pissed off several senior management members for making decisions based on facts rather than politics. There is a genocide in Gaza. Immigration centers in America are concentration camps, and it is a criminal offense to use somebody's incorrect pronouns. What's your thoughts on that being taught to cops?
The custody sergeant that was in there, there was a lot of sexual talk, wasn't there, from him. When I looked at him, I thought, predator.
Two lads in it were actually gay porn stars. So you can imagine the fucking messages I were getting after that. Like, when you're starting your OnlyFans or you're fit as fuck, I was like, wow, this is a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, he films content for the gay community, but he's not gay.
Police officers should be able to be adult creators so long as it's not a affiliate with the job. Thousands of people listen to this podcast every single month. However, only a fraction of those people actually follow and rate the podcast. Can I ask you a favor? If you want this podcast to keep on growing, if you want these stories, the advocacy for emergency services, and giving a voice to the emergency services to continue, please follow, like, and rate the podcast. It helps more than you know, and it helps the podcast to grow. Yourself and everything else, and all your absolute crazy stuff, which I'm sure you've got to tell from your time in the custody suite. So hello everyone, and welcome to the Jobs Fuck Podcast, the place where emergency services can anonymously share their funny stories, rants and accolades. Remember, you power this mission to make emergency services and workers feel heard and feel less alone. If you have a story to tell, you can email the jobpod25@gmail.com or send me a message or voice note on Instagram, the Jobs Fuck Podcast, or at J Dartmoor. So every time I do this podcast, I read that out. Last week, when I was hyped off my tits on coffee, I read it out flawlessly. This one was a bit less smooth, so maybe one day I'll be able to rhyme it off in my sleep. But we are joined today, everybody, by the wonderful host of the Spin Justice podcast, Hayley Owens. So, Hayley, talk to me. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
I can't complain. So, talk to me about Spin Justice. Talk to me a bit about your background.
Right, so basically, I had a career with West Midlands Police for 20 years, and I left that in 2022. And I'd got an idea to start a podcast for ages before I left, but I didn't want to. I needed to fine tune it in my head. You've probably been the same with yours, but basically, I left West Mids in 22. And I just mulled this idea over for still a couple of years. And I wanted to talk about the injustices in the world, but I didn't want to be a real Debbie Downer. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want to be like doom and gloom all the time, because I thought that's just going to be depressing. So anyway, alongside that, I started teaching indoor cycling, spin, on the bike. So then one day, the word spin justice just came to me. So I thought, right, that's it. We can cover everything now. We can cover like health and fitness and the injustices of the world and just like everything in between. So it was probably just, just needed that time to mull it over, just for me to relax and for the ideas to unfold in my head. And then, just got it off the ground a year ago, October 24. And we've done 4 series. 10 episodes a series. We're just finishing series 4 now. It's come out every week, and we just talk to anybody and everybody about weird and wonderful things. So like the episode that's come out today is a lady that's battled alcoholism.
Oh.
Yeah, last week's was a male OnlyFans model.
I saw that one.
Yeah.
Was he 6'8"?
Yeah. 23 stone, 6'8", yeah.
23 stone, big fucking hell.
Yeah. He films content for the gay community, but he's not gay. So that's a conversation in itself. Do you know what I mean?
I heard someone saying, I saw that there was like a post on Facebook about it that said, "Oh, my boyfriend films gay porn, but he's not gay." And the comments were like, "Well, he clearly is gay." And I was like, "Well, no, he's not, because there's a difference between a homosexual act and being homosexual yourself. It's that, it's money, it's business. He's found a market. He's obviously a good-looking lad, and he, by the sounds of it, does all right on it." How long has he been doing it for?
Been doing it a few years, a couple of years, but he's got like quite a big following now on OnlyFans and Instagram and TikTok, I think. And he basically says it's like playing a role. It's like acting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he's doing well with it, you know. So fair play to him.
I remember doing a video on TikTok that went semi-viral. It got like 1.5 million views and stuff, which was pretty cool. And what that was, it was a skit. So there were two people dressed as bobbies, and one pushes one up to the car. It turns him round, presses up against. It was very sexual. So then I did like a little stitch of it, of me ringing the police, taking my top off, having a shave, going, "Yeah, I want them police. I've been a bad boy," and stuff like that. I thought it was funny. I didn't realize the two lads in it were actually gay porn stars. So you imagine the fucking messages I were getting after that. Like, when you're starting your OnlyFans, or you're fit as fuck. I was like, wow, this is a bit overwhelming. But you know what? It was all good fun. Have you seen have you seen that Bobby who's just been sacked? I think it was West Mids who was putting content up. She was an OnlyFans creator, and she was doing it in like a uniform. And she was her Instagram post would be like her taking a photo of herself or a video of herself saying, it's upsetting when your boyfriend is thinking of me when I locked him up when he's having sex with you. And um yeah, really fucking racist stuff. Needless to say, she got hauled out very quickly, but it was all to promote like her OnlyFans and everything else. So, do you think police officers should be able to be adult creators so long as it's not a affiliate with the job?
I think as long as it's an affiliated and they've declared it as it's got to be declared as a business interest, hasn't it? And there's no connection, you know. As long as the profile or the account or whatever is a complete standalone, I personally don't think there's a problem with it. When you're wearing your uniform and doing things like that, you're crossing boundaries, aren't you?
Mhm.
So personally, yeah, I mean, as long as, because let's face it, when you're at work, and this is another thing, isn't it? When you're at work, you're on duty, aren't you?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean to say you can't have a life outside of that.
I think it depends on your supervision, that though, because I remember I used to make content surrounding domestic violence, and I used a fake name, never had any attribution to the force, never did anything with uniform, never said I was a cop. I just used to say I have a background in crime investigation, and I got pulled in over that, basically
Mm,
saying you can't be doing that because you're technically never off duty. And I pushed back against that and said, well, I'm not being paid 24 hours a day.
yeah,
I get paid for
exactly.
the hours of work. So never, I mean, granted, if I pulled out my warrant card and I started going, "I'm a Bobby, look at me," that's very different. So there is an argument there saying what you do in your own time is obviously is up to you. But I think with something like an OnlyFans kid, like an adult content creator, they will probably definitely have an issue with that. But then you'd have to ask the question, well, why am I consenting adult? People that watch me have no affiliation to who I am, what I do.
Exactly.
So what's the argument now? I'm sure there'll be someone listening to this who starts screaming at me. I'll probably get some emails about it, but yeah, the thing of posting things in uniform, I can't really get behind that.
I'm pretty sure, you know, that is set out anyway, isn't it, within guidance and whatnot, that you can't be doing that. It must be in the social media policies for each force that you can't be doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
but
when people do, yeah, there's a fine line, isn't there? If you're completely unaffiliated and you're not having any connection, you'd probably be all right, wouldn't you? But
just sticking on that then. So when I joined, you had to fill out something which says, "Are you part of?" I can't remember it, but like EDL,
mm,
BNP, stuff like quite like far right nationalist groups. What's your thoughts on that? Should you be able to be a cop or involved in the criminal justice system if you are a supporter of them? Or even the other way, you know, like Antifa, they're really left wing.
that's what I mean. You see, the, this is the thing now. I feel like everyone's got an opinion one way or another. There's not many people that are just like, they don't, you know, like, let's say the flags, for example. So if the flags are being put up, you're either for it, you're either against it. Maybe some people are just like on the fence, whatever. But some if you asked if you asked like I don't know 100 people in the force, they would have an opinion, wouldn't they? They'd say, "Oh yeah, I'm not really patriotic, and I'd love to see the flags," or you might get someone that's dead against them. So it's the same thing. Do you know? I'm not saying that you're going to be affiliated to the EDL or the opposite. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying political views are present, aren't they, within most people?
And I know that you can't share well, you're not supposed to share political views while you're in work, because the police are supposed to be apolitical, even though that it's quite apparent they're anything but as an organization, individually as an officer. So there was a viral clip what went round, and it was a bloke called Liam Tufts. I watched his podcast. I met him in person. He's a sound guy. But there was a video what went round where he's basically having a go at an officer at a protest because the officer wouldn't shake his hand.
I saw it.
And and I went on his podcast recently, and he asked me that question. He said, "If you were the officer, would you have shaken my hand?" And I said, "No, I wouldn't have done." And I think he was a bit taken back by it. And I explained, to you, you're seeing officers dancing at pride parades, you're seeing officers doing this and being more left wing, and that you, as a person on the right side of the political spectrum, are then being refused the same courtesy which is being shown to other people on the opposite side. So I can understand why you would be upset that that officer didn't shake your hand. However, that the organization might be politically leaning one way or the other, unofficially, but we can apparently see that that's the case. But that individual officer, if he would have shaken your hand, he would have had his supervisor going on at him saying that you can't show any political allegiance.
Mm,
Whether that was your intent or not to put the officer in that position is obviously, we know that wasn't the case, but you've got to consider what shit the officer's going to get in. And I think he appreciated that kind of answer because, one, I was being honest, but I also addressed his concern and his sense of injustice, but he also addressed the reasons why the officer didn't shake his hand and that no officer really would should have done, um, because of that showing political bias.
mm.
So, he, but yeah, like we said, even though that as a police officer you're not supposed to show political allegiance while in work, that doesn't mean you can't hold. I mean, you could hold very, very strong political views. You could be a communist, you could be a very far right. Does it affect your job and does it affect how you interact with people? That's the main thing I would say. And save like and save you as like an OnlyFans creator as well. Are you passing out your QR code or your links to people in work? If you are, then that's not okay. But outside of work, okay, there's an argument.
I think when you're in work, as long as you abide by the standards of professional behaviour, i.e., you treat everyone with um, courtesy or and respect and are equal to everybody. So if you go out to a job and you I don't know, let's say that you are really far right, yeah, and you go out to a job and it triggers your political view. You cannot act on that when you're at work. You're at work. You've got to deal with that person like you deal with any member of the public or anybody, you know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
and I think most officers do that. I think that most police officers wouldn't let it affect their role. Not as I'm talking from my own opinions here and what I've seen over the last sort of 20 years. I definitely haven't seen like any of that. But I know people have got certain views, but I've never seen them play out in work.
But just to be on about political views, now we mentioned about the panorama thing, and I think that's a good segue to move into. So those officers are now obviously being disciplined because they expressed political views which the force didn't like outside of work in their own time, and they were secretly recorded doing so. So there's two veins of thinking here. One is the corporate, you're never off duty, you're always a representative of the police force. Then there's the other one. I'm off work. I'm not being paid by the force at the moment in time. I have these views and I didn't know I was being filmed. And even if I knew I was being filmed, I'm not in work. What's your thoughts on the officers expressing those views?
So I watched the documentary. You've watched it, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I felt as though of what we saw, and let's face it, we've seen an hour. Is it an hour summed up? 7 months worth
Yeah,
of
yeah.
footage in an hour.
12-hour
So
shifts, 5
yeah.
days a week.
So what we did see, because there's obviously they've picked the footage, to suit the documentary. There will have been fantastic work going on that they've not shown. There will have been probably other comments made that they haven't shown. First of all, I think the reporter, Rory Bibb, was it? He went in as a DEO, as I would know that job, as a DEO for 7 months undercover. That's a hard job to do. I did that for 13 years. The custody sergeant that was in there, there was a lot of sexual talk, wasn't there, from him? I've worked with people like that over the years, and from when I looked at him, I thought predator. Like, do you know what I mean? Just like sexual, like, yeah. I just thought, you can't be saying things like that. I think he made inappropriate comments to PICs, didn't he? There was a lady that came in dressed up from a fancy dress. He made a comment about that. Then he made a
Yeah,
comment
and
to
he
someone
wanted to
else.
search her because he found her attractive or something like that. I mean, that's not okay.
Bang
That's
out of
no.
order, mate. Like, you don't
You can't be
deserve to be
getting
wearing that
sexual
uniform.
gratification off
No,
that.
don't deserve to be wearing that uniform. Out. That's my opinion. Um, there were some others that were see that's on duty, isn't it? If not, forget that forget that the reporter's got a camera on him. Custody blocks are recorded now, so that would have been recorded anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're saying that on camera because there ain't. I don't think there's any custody blocks these days that are not recorded, especially at a charge desk.
As soon as you walked in, well, when you basically turned the corner to drive into the car park, you were on camera. Everything is covered.
He was sat for some of those conversations. He was sat at a charge desk. Charge desks, as we know, are visually and audio recorded. So forget the fact that you've got an undercover reporter in front of you. You're actually saying that when you know you're being recorded saying it.
That's probably complacency after being in there for so long that he's forgotten that this is obviously happening,
Yeah.
and probably not being challenged properly as well.
Mm.
And the fact, I mean, I say that though because didn't the reporter make a comment and he took him into a back room what wasn't recorded and said like, just so you know everything's recorded. It's like, well, if you know that, you clearly think that what you're saying is okay, which is actually more worrying that you know you're being recorded to the point where you are willing to pull somebody out of the room to stop them getting in trouble because you know it's recorded. But then you're also making these comments, which you know you're being recorded for making, you don't think there's an issue with them, which is also almost more worrying that he's still willing to make them. What's your thoughts about the cops who were secretly recorded and expressing views outside of work when they were having a drink?
That's a tricky one, I think, for me, because I know, like you said earlier, you're always on duty, but they're drinking alcohol, so they're not on duty. Um, I think that's a real trick. It's not. I'm not saying that I agree with their opinions, but what I'm saying is they've expressed an opinion in what they felt was a safe environment to do so. Because let's face it, you wouldn't express an opinion if you felt that you weren't in a safe environment. So, but having said that, they've had a drink potentially, so your inhibitions go a little bit, don't they?
There's two thoughts with that, I think. Both things can be true at the same time. You can say you don't agree with their point of view, but they still have the right to hold those points of view, pertaining to it doesn't affect their role. As long for me, as long as they're not on duty and they're not representing the police force at the time and making such comments, I don't think the police organization can really hold them to account like that. They would maybe keep their eye on them to see whether they get more complaints from certain communities or, maybe they have a bias towards certain people when they're in duty, on duty. But if the way they conduct their role is strictly professional and unbiased, and yet outside of work, they potentially have quite unsavory or even racist views, does that affect their role as a cop? I think the reason why they were dragged through the mud like they have been is because it was publicized, and they are at that moment when they're publicized, then they are then retroactively or retrospectively a representation of the police force. So then it becomes a case of they are representative of the Met. They've made these comments, therefore the Met has to act. I think if they weren't recorded and supervisors were there or whoever was there, that wouldn't have happened. But I also had someone reach out to me who said that they actually went for a drink with that journalist, and they said that all the questions were very leading questions. They were basically probing for reactions. So it's like getting somebody drunk, asking them really controversial things, and then as soon as they share a controversial opinion, you're like, right, I've got you.
Off duty though, mate. Like, so let's just spin this, yeah. Let's say,
See what you did there.
yeah, let's say that journalist went, right, I use this example quite a lot. I like Ricky Gervais, right?
Seen
So,
him live. It's brilliant.
yeah, yeah. Let's just say that they weren't in the pub, but they were watching Ricky Gervais stand up, and they were howling at his jokes that were proper, like, you know,
Close to the
what?
bone.
Yeah. What would happen then?
Well, you could argue, oh, well, you clearly agree with those points of view. So do you share those same points of view? And it's like there's a difference between laughing at a joke about something terrible and then agreeing with the terrible thing. Like I watched Ricky Gervais's most recent stand up in person. Um, and some of the jokes he was taught, oh my God. I mean, there's close to the bone and then you're
Yeah,
chewing on it.
yeah,
And it was like, wow.
yeah.
It was, I mean, there's edgy and then but doesn't mean you agree with what he's saying, and
It's
he doesn't agree
context.
with what he's saying. It's a joke. He's making a joke. Um, but then if I was still in the police and I was being recorded and saying, look at him laughing at he's a bobby him, then potentially I could find myself in hot water. But I'm not agreeing with that point of view.
It's all about context. This is the thing. In his last stand up, I've not seen the latest one, couldn't get tickets, but in his latest one, he says he was having an argument online with someone because she said, is there any jokes about rape? So basically, what it comes down to is you can laugh at a joke, but it depends on the context. And he uses that scene in The Office. It's a training day scene in the office, and they're doing a scenario where they're complaining to the hotel manager, and he goes, "I think there's been a rape up there." That bit. That's a joke about rape. It doesn't mean you're laughing at rape. It's the context of the joke.
Mhm.
So I really struggle with things because I find Ricky Gervais funny. That's my kind of humour. It doesn't mean to say that I hold those views. It means that I can differentiate between reality and context and joke. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I find the pub part of the documentary on the Panorama tricky, because they're off duty, they're in the pub, they feel that they're in a safe environment. For me, if they were sat watching Jimmy Carr, Ricky Gervais, someone like that, and laughed, it's the same for me, because you say, oh, hang on a minute. Do you know what I mean? Now, some of the comments in the pub were offensive to ethnic minorities, but like you just said, if you looked at that officer's history, has he got loads of complaints against certain minority groups? Do you know what I mean? How does he portray himself as a police officer? Is he on duty? And you're okay to have an opinion. You're okay to have an opinion. Do you know what I mean? Yes, he's voiced it in that environment. He's been caught on camera. He's ended up on the telly. Do you know what I mean? But for him, for the officer that was making the sexual comments, I look at them differently.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's a big difference between out with a group of colleagues, having a drink, blowing off some steam. And plus, if you've been in a job like frontline policing or in custody, you are exposed to the worst of humanity every single day. You are naturally going to get probably quite a cynical outlook, quite a bleak outlook, and your humor is going to be abyssal. I had the I had a dark sense of humor before I started the police. I had an abyssal one by the time I left. So people who watch those programs and they see what those officers say have never worked in that environment where that is also a coping mechanism to prevent yourself from, from for want of a better phrase, from cracking up. So we also need to take that into account as well as as the reasons why those officers might see things in that certain way. But I agree with you in the sense of there's a difference between the people who make it in the comfort of a safe environment, what they believe in the safe environment outside of work, and then the people who made such as the sergeant, who not only made sexual comments but was then actively trying to gratify himself by going and searching somebody who he found attractive for his own gratification and making inappropriate comments to staff as a supervisor as well. So there's that higher responsibility burden on them because of the rank they held. So yeah, I agree with you in the sense of there is that bit of a disparity, and one is definitely much more severe than the other. I don't think that custody sergeant shouldn't work there anymore.
Nah, he don't deserve to wear that uniform, in my opinion. I think that what I saw of him, I didn't like. I thought, you know what, if you're saying all this when you know you're being recorded, because let's face it, mate. I mean, I worked in custody in the days when it weren't recorded, and then it came in a bit later, and quite a bit later, and I never ever forgot. I mean, I wouldn't do anything wrong. Do you know what I mean? I treat people the same whether I'm recorded or not. But I felt like you always knew that you were being watched. So I struggle to think that he forgot. He's just that's his way of thinking so much that's just who he is. And I read somewhere that there was lots of female colleagues of his that were really relieved that it was like that highlighted with him. Yeah, I read that because I thought, and I read that there was some female colleagues that had a watch party to watch that episode.
Oh, really? Wow, Jesus. Right. Okay. So then you've got like the testimonies from staff as well, haven't you? Yeah. Okay. So they definitely caught. I could talk about this all day, but what we'll do is we'll move on to the rants and stories. First, I mean, I really like talking about the story of the week, and like I said, we had something a bit different planned, but I mean, I was more than happy to get onto that, and like I said, we could have stuck on that all day. But rants and stories, this is like definitely, I would say, my favorite part of this program. So Instagram, the Jobs Fuck Podcast, or email the jobpod25@gmail.com. All are anonymous, as I'm sure you know by now. So I've got this one from somebody who says, I've been watching your content for a while and I really like it. Thank you very much. I spent a few years as an immigration officer working for Home Office ICE. Now, I didn't know we had an ICE department. I thought that was just an American thing, but apparently we have it as well. Recently making the move to become a police officer. We had a day's worth of DEI training in the force recently where we were told that there is a genocide in Gaza, immigration centers in America are concentration camps, and it is a criminal offense to use somebody's incorrect pronouns. So I'll leave it at that. What's your thoughts on that being taught to cops?
We're in the UK now, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, this is UK policing.
That's a political view being imparted, isn't it?
That's 100% politics because the the Israel and Gaza thing, very, very complicated topic. People get very irate depending on which side of the fence you sit on. Um, why is that being what relevance is that
No
to
relevance at all to UK policing.
everyday policing? That's and immigration centres in America, that's fuck all to do with us.
Nothing to do with us.
And a criminal offence to use somebody's incorrect pronouns. It's not because it's corrected by law. Gender critical thinking is protected by law. So that's not illegal either. So
Has that got any relevance to the training?
no, no. I mean, I had some DEI training. Funny enough, I did an advanced course to identify controlling coercive behaviour,
Mm.
and half of the training was all to do with DEI, and it was to do with pronouns, cultural differences, etc. And I went on a podcast recently. I brought this up, and the host was basically saying like, what does a cultural difference matter? Whether someone's being abused or not, you can identify that. You need
Mm,
to be able to identify the cultural whether the offence has been committed rather than the cultural differences between them.
mm.
So, but the pronouns thing is an interesting one, and this goes back to what we were saying before about police being political. Um, so because the LGBTQ thing is generally seen as quite a left wing movement, and quite left leaning. And I know the police, I think Northamptonshire or Northumbria police, one of those, they were actually taken to court for actively taking part in pride events because, like we said, the police aren't meant to be political. Because they would take part in the pride events but not take part in any others, and they would be more heavy-handed with counter protests or opposition protests. So then why are we giving training to officers, teaching them that it's a criminal offence to not use somebody's preferred pronoun? I don't understand that.
No, and I think like your diversity and equality and inclusion training is, yeah, I get that. That's necessary. But do you know what? I've had this week with school. My two lads, I've got teenage boys. They go to a Catholic school. And one of them, my youngest, come home. And he said, he's been sent out of the class. He's always getting sent out. So I said, what did you get sent out for? And he said, basically, the teacher had said, she was talking about trans people and trans rights and whatnot. And my son said, well, it don't say that in the Bible. Because it doesn't say that in the Bible. And my youngest is very Catholic. He's got the Bible next to his bed. He reads it. So he knows what he's talking about more than me. And he raised that with the teacher and he got sent out of the class. And I was like, you what? Straight on the phone I was.
But this is a Catholic school.
But so my argument is, why is that teacher forcing her political opinions on my child? And when he challenges it, because what she's saying is opposing to what's said in the Bible, bearing in mind you're a Catholic school, why is they being sent out? I ain't having it.
I think, I mean, if someone was to, staying on the school bit, I would feel better. Okay, you're teaching about trans ideology. That's whether you agree with that or not. But let's say that's okay. It's also then should be okay to be able to challenge that because the school's a place for learning. It's meant to be learning, debate. Let's discuss ideas rather than one-sided indoctrination. If you challenge this, you're wrong, you're bad, you need to leave the room. That shouldn't be how it is.
Nah.
If I was the teacher, I would like to think that I would have gone, okay, well, let's discuss why it's not in the Bible. Let's discuss what the Bible, because then you get a more rounded view.
Yeah.
And what I find with people, and not just on the left hand side of the political spectrum, but on the right hand side too, people generally live in like echo chambers. They don't really want to hear the opposing side. I think that's quite dangerous because then, like I said, you live in an echo chamber, and as soon as somebody challenges your perspective, that person is now the enemy because they've gone against this holy idea what you have. I would much prefer a open discussion and discourse so that both sides of the argument can be heard and then people can make their own mind up.
Mm.
So what did you say to the school?
So I emailed the school, explained what had happened, and I said, I just want to point out, we're not opposing trans people and ideology. You live your best life. That's my opinion. Do whatever you, as long as you ain't hurting anyone. You
Mhm.
live your best life. What I've got a problem with is him being sent out for challenging it because of what's taught. So bearing in mind, RE is a big thing in their school because it's a Catholic school. They
Yeah.
have masses and things like that. And that was my issue. What she could have turned around and said, okay, let's discuss. The Bible was written then, and things have moved on, and
Hmm.
things are much more acceptable socially, and blah blah blah, and had a proper discussion about it. She just sent him out. That was
Yeah.
my
I don't like that.
because I was like, I'm not saying we're against anything because we're not. What I'm saying is he's challenged what you're saying, and you've just basically said get out.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
can't. I can't say I like that at all. You definitely shouldn't be taught that it's illegal to. use somebody's incorrect pronouns in the police.
No,
That's also not that's also not true, and that's that political ideology creeping into our public services as well.
yeah.
And yeah,
Because let's face it, and this is another thing, and this is where it's going to come back to the views and opinions, yeah. So let's face it, that trainer has a view, and they're imparting that view when they're delivering their training. What's the difference with the bloke in the pub imparting his view, blowing off some steam in the pub off duty, but unfortunately he's on camera? It's just two sides of the fence.
yeah, but like we said, one's okay because it's like a left wing view, and the other one is considered okay because that's a right. That's more of like a classical conservative view, isn't it? So I actually asked for more context on this when the officer sent it through. And this wasn't initially part of my notes, but they sent it through while we were while I was setting up. So I asked for more context, and it said we had it as part of our student induction into the force. It's a day long and was primarily delivered by a member of police staff who mainly went on about irrelevant topics such as handling a gingerbread person or a fisher them. Although granted, some of the information was relevant, such as the killing of Stephen Lawrence and how this had an impact on policing, etc. We then had a guest speaker come in who was a member of the public that was trans. Both the speaker, who was transgender, along with a member of the police staff, referred to immigration centers in America being concentration camps, stated that using someone's incorrect pronouns is an offense, there's a genocide in Gaza, etc., and spouting pro illegal migration rhetoric. Interesting. At one point, the guest speaker, who was trans, stated that she was banned from America for being transgender. I challenged this and stated transgender people aren't banned from America. And during the Q and A at the end, it was shut down very quickly by the member of police staff delivering the training. The political agenda of DEI training was clear, and it was concerning to me as we're meant to be impartial. I heard from the last course that they complained about the speaker who came in, as she made reference to the fact that she believed that gender reassignment surgery was more important than cancer treatments. The last course was apparently told she would never be allowed to be a guest speaker again, but she was sure allowed to speak to us. It's mind boggling, really. So I was quite happy when I got that bit of extra context through, because that shows that there's a clear political capture, and it's training officers to be quite left wing. And then when you talk about, you can then look into the thing about, the hate crimes and why we're policing speech a lot more, and everything else. It seems like it's coming through from the very beginning. And you have to ask the question, why are police officers who are supposed to be impartial being taught left wing ideology and left wing points of view from the offset?
I disagree. I think right, let's take it back to basics in terms of the law. What's illegal, what's not illegal, and yes, we've got to move with the times. I mean, laws get updated, don't they? The Sexual Offences Act was updated in 2003. That's pretty recent, isn't it, really, in terms of law?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? The Theft Act is what, 68? Do you know what I mean? There's quite a big difference.
Something like that.
Yeah. So, like, we can't be political with it. What's law is law. But then, having said that, as long as the standards of professional behaviour are adhered to, alongside, the law and pace. Do you know what I mean? I think as long as you are, because I talk about this quite a bit on different platforms, whether it's my own or other people's, whatever. Don't you think a lot of things are really subjective? So, like, you might look at something and you might think, "Oh my God, that's terrible." I use the example of the jury quite a lot. Have you watched the documentary about the jury?
Is it the one with the lady who did the weakest link?
No. So there's one on Channel 4. It's quite old now, and they've got two juries, jury A, jury B, and it's an experiment. And they deliver the same trial to both juries who know nothing about each other, and they come up with a different verdict. And I always think lots of things are subjective, and it depends on who you get at the time. It's the same with CPS lawyers. You could present a case to the CPS, and I could present a case to the CPS, and you might get a charging decision, and I won't.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think it's all down? It's a lottery. A lot of the time, it's a lottery.
This is why I think we shouldn't police speech. I'm not a free speech absolutist, but I'm definitely a free speech advocate for that very reason. So I've seen people get locked up because they sent a message saying, "I want to stick my fishing rod in your pond," for example.
Right.
So they got locked up for malicious communications because the officer or the sergeant or the victim, whoever, found it grossly offensive. That case got thrown out, like, it didn't get charged because one person might find it grossly offensive, but another person doesn't. And like you said, it can completely depend on the CPS lawyer or whoever is looking at it. I had one which was a hate crime because basically the guy had been cheating on his partner. The partner's best mate sent him a big long ranting message calling him every name under the sun and said, "You're mentally unstable." And the guy had bipolar, so we deemed that as a hate crime. That didn't go anywhere because I was like, well, no, she's just saying, why are you sleeping with, why are you sleeping around?
Mm.
You've taken it as a hate crime, but anyway. So policing speech, I think there's things you shouldn't be able to say, like you shouldn't be able to call for violence against another person or actively incite violence. But I, when you become into policing speech, it gets very messy. And like you said, if we have a fair justice system, then that needs to be quite strict in what is okay and what isn't. There
Mm.
can't be really that room for ambiguity because otherwise, some people get sent to jail for one thing when someone else can do the same thing over a different jury and then not be sentenced for it. So, yeah, with that, with the whole opinion and bias and everything else, it can completely depend on who you get. Whereas with something objective like a robbery, a kidnapping, or whatever, well, we know that's happened, that's defined, and they breached that.
The thing is, it comes back to what I said at the beginning. You could ask 100 police officers a question, and most of them would have an opinion one way or another. That's that's just that's just humans, isn't it? We have opinions. Do you know what I mean? But this also recently, there was people getting arrested and sacked and whatnot for talking. The Charlie Kirk murder, right? So there was people getting work. They were getting locked up. They were getting sacked from the jobs. Fast forward a week or two, Bonnie Blue gets attacked, and everyone's going, "Yeah, she deserves it." Like this and that. Hang on a minute. We're promoting violence against a woman here, and nothing's happening to these people. Yet a week before, people are getting locked up and sacked for voicing their opinions on the Charlie Kirk death. You're just like, it's all over the place.
I've not heard about the Bonnie Blue thing. What was that?
She got battered well, she didn't get battered. She got punched in a club. She went to a club and someone, a bloke, I think it was, punched her. So the headline is, like the news outlets are putting on social media, Bonnie Blue gets beat up, blah, blah, blah. The comments were disgusting.
Yeah, yeah, I've not seen it, but I can imagine what the comments were like. I mean, I don't advocate for anyone being assaulted. Um, you might disagree with what she does. You
How are
might
we promoting
really
violence
disagree with
against
what
a
she
woman?
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't go around hitting people for it.
The saying goes that you might disagree with what Charlie Kirk stood for, but he didn't deserve to be killed. It's the same thing.
Yep, yep. You should challenge people's argument, not attack their character. If you get me. So this is one of the things I can't stand is when someone will go, "I disagree with you," and rather than challenge my argument with what I'm saying, they will call you, "Well, you don't understand because you're white or you're a man or you're this or you're red." It's like, okay, you're showing your position now. You don't have a counter argument.
Yeah,
You're now, because you don't have a counter argument, you're attacking me. And this goes full circle back to your son in school saying, "This is why it's important to hear both sides of the debate." Because rather than saying, "No, get out of the classroom because you're wrong and you're a bad person," you go, "Well, actually, I've heard this argument before, so I can properly challenge it." And that's again, again moving on with that is a completely bad reason why we are politicizing our police force when they go in, because they'll hear a view, believe that view is the correct view. So anyone who has an opposing view to that, they haven't learned how to have that discourse and how to have that critical thinking, which is quite essential for people who are enforcing the law. um but yeah, I mean, like I said, think what you want about Bonnie Blue. I don't think she'd be punched though.
no, of course, exactly. That's the thing. It doesn't mean you have to agree with what she's doing. I can give a toss what she's doing, but for her to be beat up because of it, absolutely not. But then also, it comes down to it's okay to be offended. No one ever
Mm.
died from being offended, did they? Do you know what I mean? So where you can take offence at something, that's all right.
Yeah.
Move on. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
and this is where I'll constantly come back to. It's okay to be offended. Another Ricky Gervais thing that he talks about. It's okay to be offended.
You don't have the right to not be offended, but in law, certainly in this country, it's illegal to offend somebody.
Do you know
If
what I mean? Like,
somebody
what the
feels
fuck?
if someone feels distress or alarm
Yeah,
after something you've said, that's a criminal offence and that could land you 6 months in prison.
yeah.
I think we should do away with that. I think
It depends what it is,
personally, I
isn't
think
it?
people need to be a
Because
bit more fucking robust.
yeah, I think and it comes down to context again. And that's the thing. We need to remember that everything needs to be looked at on its own individual merit. But it is okay, if someone's like, said a hurty word, fucking hell.
All
Like,
right.
do you know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because we actually had a story about something like this. It ties in quite well to what we're saying about offence and training. So someone sent in, we had a new cop start last week, one shift, and they quit. They also got a cop they also got a cop sacked in training school for bullying, and then they described them as a snowflake. Now, given the kind of training which we've been told that officers are having, and then I hear stories like this. It's like if you're getting offended over something in training, you are fucked when you get in on the streets and people are trying to kick the shit out of you. Um, and there was another one I was going to say. Yeah, trigger warnings. Do you know what a trigger warning is?
Yeah, yeah.
There are people in police training who have a trigger warning on like a domestic violence training video saying they might find it distressing, or there was someone messaging me saying that somebody complained that the police safety training where they have to grip hold of people, grip hold of each other, was too violent and they didn't like it. For me, if you complain at a trigger warning or you complain at the level of force required in a controlled environment to keep you safe, you complain about that, that should be like a no, you're not good enough to go out. You're not robust enough to keep yourself safe, keep the public safe, and also to keep your colleagues safe as well. If a video with actors causes you distress, you will not be able to handle. You don't have the mental fortitude to handle um, a real life incident which is unfolding in front of you. I said that online once, and I got a massive long message I think they were a police officer saying like, I've had this happen to me and this happened to me, and it breaks me every time I have to go to an incident similar to that, but I still have to do it. Are you saying I'm not a good officer? And I'm like, no, I'm not saying that at all. You clearly have what it takes. Granted, you have to have a bit of time to yourself afterwards,
Mm,
but you're able to do your job. What I'm saying is, if you crumble before you even get there, and you're not able to do your job because of what might happen,
mm.
then you're probably in the wrong job.
That's exactly what I think. And when you said that there was an officer that left, I think fair play. You've identified that in you. You've thought I ain't got what it takes. I'm off.
Mhm.
I rate that. I really rate that because I think if you are struggling at a training stage,
Real life is very different.
exactly 20 years I worked for West Mids. I've probably had a decade's worth of therapy, right? And I would say, I'm quite a well-rounded, tough person. Doesn't mean to say that haven't had periods of my life where I've struggled. Do you know what I mean? I have. There's been periods of my life where, especially, um, when I had my children, because when I went in at 18 and I was carefree, I was dealing with anybody and everybody, and then fast forward a few years, I've now got kids to look after. My mindset changed a little bit, my viewpoint changed a little bit. I struggled at some things. Yeah, when I went into work and dealt with a sex offender or, something like that, yes, it did affect me. Yes, I've had therapy about things like that because it affected my day-to-day life to the point where I took my kids to school and I was paranoid. Bearing in mind, we've already talked about it. They go to a Catholic school. The one day they come home and went, "Oh, we've been to church." I'm straight down to school. What do you mean? Who was there? Was he left alone? I'm convinced, don't I, that he's been fiddled with by a priest because I'm dealing with it every day at work. Do you know what I mean? So yes, it affected me.
Because you see the worst society, that then makes you think all society's like that. And
Yes,
I know exactly what you mean. You become hyper vigilant. It's
yes.
like I was walking around yesterday where I used to work, and a prolific sex offender walked past me, like who had arrested before, and I remember stopping, going, "That's." I was back in job mode. I was like, "Is he on bail? Is he wanted? Do I need
Mm.
to ring?" And my girlfriend's like, "Well, if he's out, he's probably not." But you straight away go back to, I'm looking around. Is there any kids nearby?
Checking the time. Has he got conditions to stay in between school
Yeah, yeah,
hours? Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And this is what
You
I was
become
doing.
massively hyper vigilant.
I was doing it every day. I mean, a lot better now, but the kids are older. You know, this was really, really prevalent for me when they were toddlers, when they were at nursery, when they were, starting to go to school. I spoke about it loads on different platforms. Someone would say, "Can they come for a sleepover?" I'd be like, "Absolutely not. I don't know you, and I don't know your husband.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it ain't happening. Then going out of my sight," because I was so hyper vigilant with what I was dealing with.
yeah, yeah.
So that's how my life's portrayed, for over the last however many years. But I've also identified it in myself and thought, this ain't right, man. I was like OTT, and I took myself off to therapy, and I've had lots of very in-depth therapy. We're not talking your low level. They sort of said to me, you've got real ingrained, what do they call it? Um, Values. We need to challenge your values here because you are convinced that this is going to happen to your kids because you're so overexposed to it every day. But it doesn't mean I wasn't good at my job. So I can see what that officer's saying, that they've struggled. And let's face it, we might watch some body worn. We see things on the telly now, officers getting upset over things. There was, in fact, the latest 24 hours in police custody. I don't know if you've watched it, but it was a Luton offence of a lad who killed his mom and two siblings. Have a watch of it, mate. It's brilliant. But the sergeant's talking on camera and gets upset. She's a human being.
Yeah.
It's good to see. Do you know what I mean? We're not robots.
No, definitely not. I had therapy when
Mm,
I was in the job. So I had therapy when I was in the DA relationship. Loads of shit happened as a result of that, and then I had 6 weeks of therapy through the job. They said if I wanted any more, I'd have to go elsewhere. But they put me through for 6 weeks, and it helped. It did
mm,
really well. When I left the job, I found the best thing personally, what I found to really get to because therapy was like peeling back the layers, and there's only so much you can do in therapy unless you do it for quite a long time when you can really peel back those layers.
mm.
I found the thing what really got straight in was magic mushrooms. I did
Ah,
I did a couple of grams. I did it in a controlled environment, and if anyone's listening to this, they're incredibly powerful. Don't just go out and take them. And of course, caveat, they're illegal. You can't have them. But I did a couple of grams of that, and that sent me. It was like a spearhead straight into the heart of what was bothering me from childhood, and it was intense. It was scary, but it was also an amazing experience as well. So I think I think when it comes to dealing with trauma, I can see a future, or I'd certainly like to envisage a future where psychedelics are used in a controlled way to really help people. So I watched a documentary recently on Netflix about it, and it said people who had they called it treatment resistant depression. So people who have tried all the different kinds of medications, it's not getting any better, it's only getting worse. They were able to go on this trial,
mm,
and by the end of it, out of 12 people who were on the trial and had the psychedelics, after a week, 9 of them were fine, as in, like, didn't have, any symptoms, and after 6 to 9 months, I think still half of them hadn't regressed back to their depressive state. Now, when you compare those with conventional methods such as therapy and such as, your regular pharmaceuticals, people generally live with depression and they manage it through the medication. So I'd like to see a time where more psychedelic stuff are introduced in that controlled setting because it clearly has benefits and we need to
mm,
explore it more. The
mm.
difficulty is they're illegal. So I've got a story here,
Mm,
which probably is up your street because it's a custody one. So I put on my Instagram story, I said, "How's your week going so far?" And somebody messaged in. They said, "Bloody awful. As a custody sergeant, I pissed off several senior management members for
mm,
making decisions based on facts rather than politics. And in doing so, they've now taken a picture, they've now taken a pic into me, put me on action plans, and having made another unpopular decision in their eyes, they are now about to put me on an action plan. Not having sufficient evidence or being told the wrong things at the point of accepting someone or not into custody doesn't seem to matter to them. They suffered burnout several years ago and are now dealing with depression and panic attacks because of this. It makes it hard to stay in the job. They have a few years left and they want to essentially get to retirement. And then they've said some nice words and kind words about the podcast and the Instagram that it helps officers. Did you see much of that? As in custody sergeants basically being bollocked for booking people in when they didn't think they should, or not booking people in, shall I
not
say?
booking people in. So it changed a bit when I was in there. So bear in mind, it's the early 2000s I started in there. And then like the Code G sort of came in quite a lot later, and like things, do you know what I mean? So where you'd probably,
Mhm.
so these days we would probably voluntary interview people a lot more than we did way back then. So I probably didn't see as much of it. But when you were reading that out then, I was thinking it is not an environment to be in for a long period of time. It will burn you out. It will affect your mental health. Um, he or she said they're suffering with panic attacks and things like that. It's not. It shouldn't be an environment to be working in for prolonged periods of time. I was in there for 13 years. I've got mates that are still in there that we're talking well over the 22, 23 years now, maybe. I've been out of there for like nearly 10 years. Moved into like investigations after that on homicide. So, I probably the first 13 years was in there, and that was enough for me. That done me in, like, that for that length of time. So, first of all, I would say they need, if this is happening, I know people want to see out the retirement, but it shouldn't be, oh, well, you're in the block now, and that's where you're going to see out your days. I don't agree with that. But then when you've
I
got,
think so people get used to it, don't they? So they stick with it because they get used to it and they're good at it and they know what they're doing.
and that's great if it suits you, but not everyone's the same. So you could work in there and think, do you know what, this is absolutely sweet. I'm going to see my days out in here. Great. You know what I mean? It's not a desired role. If you're happy to stay in there for the rest of your service, fair play. But it's not for everyone. Just like the PPU is not for everyone. And, the OSU is not for everyone. You've got to look at the individual, haven't you? And moving around and stuff like that is fine. But deciding not to book someone in, and obviously we haven't got the context, have we, of who it was and what it was for.
I imagine it's probably DA related. That's normally what happens because you have to book in DA lock up regardless. I imagine it's probably something like that.
Do you want to apply bail conditions, etc., etc., etc.? We need a clear view really on what it is. But let's face it, the custody sergeant's in control. It's their block,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And
It's
they're
down to them.
responsible for that prisoner.
Yeah. So if they say no, because quite often I have worked with people that have said, no, I'm not doing that. If you want to do it and you want to endorse that custody record to say that you're doing that, be my guest. You come down and you put a record on the custody detention log explaining why you're doing that and your justification for it, because I ain't doing it. That's fair
And
enough.
this is where politics, internal politics, influences policing and decisions made. And a custody sergeant, I remember a custody sergeant sitting to me and said, I do this job because in here I'm God. There's like, it has to go 3 ranks above me to even question what I do. This is up to me. I do what I need to do. But then I had custody sergeants being burnt out. Like there was one where custody sergeants turned round to their superintendent and said, boss, what's with all these lockups and everything else coming in? Like, we're getting burnt out. We've got 3 members of staff off because of burnout, because of the amount of demand. And the superintendent basically went, yeah, but I mean, look how good our lockup stats are. And I think the custody sergeant resigned quite shortly after that because, like, well, he was one of them where they'd done the 30 years, they retired, and then he'd come back for, like 1 or 2 days a week to keep some money in the pocket and stuff. Insane, if you ask me. But yeah, it was that disconnect between what is actually right and giving the right people in that position of authority to make the correct decision and what do we want to happen, and then having no empathy, and in this case, actively punishing people for making those correct decisions. There's another one here, which is another custody one. I've got loads, but we've stuck on a few different topics today, and I've really enjoyed it.
Mm.
So we'll finish with this one. There was a well-known suspect's daughter who was arrested. While in custody, she had a pizza delivered to the front office. Turns out she'd hidden a phone in her vagina and ordered a pizza while in custody.
This happened to me
Oh, go on.
when I in a custody block that I worked in. It was back in the day. God, yeah. The front office rang us and said, "Got a pizza here for so and so." She's in like F2, and she'd ordered a
Brilliant.
pizza. Yeah, that's got to take some balls in it to order a pizza into custody. I'd go
I
after that.
say, yeah, I say, go on. You can have it, cheeky
Do you know
bitch,
what?
but
Fair
why
play
not?
to you, Bab.
Yeah, we had the lad who was a master at hiding things. Like, he was a prolific shoplifter. He got searched in custody. We found a load of gear on him. He then said his stomach was hurting, so he had to go to hospital. He got searched on the way back into the custody suite. He was then I think he was searched 3 or 4 times, and he still managed to hide some tobacco and
Mm.
started having made a rollie, tobacco and a light, and
I
he
was
had
going
a
to say, I
rolling
must
in
have
the
had a
in the
light.
in the cell. Yeah, so
Yeah, mad.
incredible.
Do you know, back in the day when I first started working in the block, the prisoners were allowed to smoke.
Wow.
Yeah, they were, like, it was the thing because the no smoking ban didn't come in till a good few years later. So they pressed the buzzer because they wanted a light. They weren't allowed the
Yeah,
lighters
yeah.
in the cell, but they were allowed the cigarettes. And
That's
it was yeah,
insane.
yeah, yeah. So back then it was absolutely. In fact, I used to buy lighters to make my day at work easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there were some officers who smoked. If, like, someone was kicking off or something when they were getting locked up, they'd be like, "Right, can't," and they give them a fag. Yeah, we'll have that,
Mm,
and they'd have a fag with them.
yeah.
There's an argument to say you can't do that now. I've done it before where someone's been remanded, for example, and they've been all right, and we pulled up to the custody suite and gone, "Can I just have a fag before I go in?" They'd be like, "Are you gonna? Right, you're not been a bell end. Yeah, go on, have a fag." And they've
Mm,
had a fag, we've had a chat, and then it's like, "Right, take me away."
yeah.
It's being human, I think.
Yes, exactly.
It's that
I don't
human
disagree
element.
with it. If you smoke, which I don't, and you bear in mind, you're locked up for long periods of time. You can't smoke in there these days. Then you potentially been remanded for court. It's going to be. Let them have a cigarette, man. Who
Yeah,
cares?
it's not the end of the world, is it?
You know.
So we finish on what's called a good news story. So
Nice.
this good news story was an officer who messaged them and said, I mean, it doesn't start off good, but it ends quite good. It says, I've been assaulted twice this month. One was no further action due to them show remorse, and the other was charged, and which I will get my £1 a month payment for the next 30 years. I'm currently living paycheck to paycheck. However, that said, I still love my job and what I get to do. I've done the car chases, the foot chases, rescuing people, and all the sexy stuff, but the best job I've ever dealt with was a little old lady that was walking around at around 3 a.m. in November, freezing cold and appeared very lost. She was clearly suffering with dementia, and she told me she was on her way to church to meet her daughter. I put her in the car, warmed her up, and tried to find out as much information as possible because she wasn't known in our system. I managed to speak to her for about 15 minutes and she could direct me back to her home. We got inside and I made her a cup of tea and we sat down and I managed to get in contact with her family and they came down to look after her. That was one of those jobs where I actually helped someone. I went home that day with a beaming smile on my face. If I hadn't have found her, God forbid what could have happened. She was
Mm,
easily in her 80s. I could go on, but that was one of the moments where I knew I was in the right job.
yeah, it's
And I
nice.
think we hear so much shit what cops have to deal with, and cops get so much shit off people who blatantly don't like them and in the media and everything else. But you never hear about that. Someone's nan walking out and the cop
Oh,
finds
exactly.
them and takes them
But
home.
this is the thing, because public confidence in policing is at an all-time low, all we ever hear is the shit.
Yeah.
We don't hear the good stories, do we? And let's face it, you must still have friends who are still in. I definitely still have. They're doing a great job, aren't they? The majority of police officers are going to work and doing a fantastic job.
No.
Yes, you get the small amounts that are corrupt or abuse their position for sexual purposes or whatever. But I think that in percentage-wise, it's low. The majority of people go to work to do a good job, don't they? But we don't hear about that.
Definitely. No. No, we don't. Okay, Hayley. Okay, Hayley, so where can people find you?
So at Spin Justice on Instagram and at Spin Justice on YouTube. I ain't good with all
Amazing.
the other things. I ain't good with TikTok. I'm not good with any of the others. So my platforms are YouTube and Instagram, both Spin Justice. And if you can follow or subscribe, it helps us out, doesn't it?
Definitely, definitely. Well, we'll put all your links and everything else. You're also available on Spotify too. So
Yes.
we'll put all your links and everything else in the description of this video. You have been amazing, and thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, go and follow Hayley. She's amazing. She's got a great podcast, and yeah, show us some love. Until next time, stay safe. See you later.